everyone. Apologize I had to delay this video. Unfortunately, I was relatively busy over the weekend and did not have time to make videos, but I should be caught up by the end of the day as of Monday. I made a note of it in Thursday's video, but in case you were not aware of that, I'm just letting you know now. Okay, so for this particular underrated film Saturday, I thought it would be interesting to briefly explore the film Back to School. I think this one is in particular overlooked not only because of its sort of kind of goofy and quirky premise, but also because I think it's generally one of those films that, unless you're sort of a fan of the particular actor within this film, you may or may not have heard of it, depending. It doesn't seem like it's been fairly recognized as a comedy. I mean, it doesn't seem to be one where a lot of people remember or kind of go to. But I thought it would be interesting to bring this one up because I think it actually does provide some interesting context and is, I think, a good way of approaching this kind of a comedy. So basically, this movie stars none other than Rodney Dangerfield. In case you're not familiar, excuse me, with Rodney Dangerfield, he was basically a famous sort of, I think he did like a lot of stand-up, if I'm not mistaken, over the years, and I don't believe he is still alive. He is fairly older comedian, and a lot of his material is really like based upon like one-liners. That was kind of his shtick, and he was kind of more along the side of trying to be kind of crude too with his humor. Which again, I guess you could even argue, at least within around the period of to when he sort of even started out and when he eventually became popular, it wasn't something that was kind of, I guess, very common, at least back within that period. So he did try to kind of bring out his own kind of brand, and he succeeded, I think, fairly well at it, if I'm not mistaken, because I think a lot of people remember him personally. But he plays Thornton Mellon within this film, who is basically a sort of successful business, I guess you could say tycoon to a certain extent. And he ends up deciding to enroll in his son's college. Now you will figure out exactly why that is if you choose to watch the film. But basically, what really happens with this premise is that you sort of see the struggle that Mellon has, in particular Thornton Mellon, since Mellon's his last name. You really see the difficulty he has in sort of really kind of understanding the kind of college life. And he's one of those figures who's sort of very kind of anti-authoritarian in the sense that he doesn't like the kind of really classroom sort of setting, where there's even one point within the film where he's basically lecturing the teacher on how things are supposed to work and things, and basically the teacher is this kind of uppity British guy, and it just kind of plays off fairly interestingly in that sense of how it's trying to kind of embrace that comedic effect of having a student somehow kind of confronting the teacher. And you sort of see too how despite Thornton's flaws of being kind of really crude and sort of a little bit kind of at times maybe a little bit full of himself, and other times just kind of being a little bit kind of over just he not just crude in the sense of the language, more so of just his demeanor. It's kind of, it's not very classy. He's not the classy businessman, that's for sure. And you sort of see how he kind of sticks out as a sore thumb as a result within this college. And you sort of see the trials and tribulations he goes through, the sort of conflict that he kind of has with his son. It kind of showcases the kind of things that oftentimes I think we would consider maybe now to be kind of cliche, in particular of the sort of even 90s films. But the way in which I think it handles its premise, the way it explores the idea of a father going back to school uh, with his son is, again, it's rather interesting, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, and you can sort of have fun with this particular film, and I think that ultimately really works. It doesn't go too full-blown serious. It knows when to have maybe a certain dramatic moment, but it doesn't cloud the film with it, because for the majority of it, the conflicts are not necessarily that big of conflicts. They just kind of come and go throughout the film. And the way in which sort of Rodney Dangerfield expresses his lines, the way he showcases his mannerisms and whatnot, really does show you the kind of character he sort of, I guess you could say, maybe even is to a certain extent. Um, and at the same time, you could argue whether or not he is playing himself. I mean, I think there could be some debate as far as to how much of a character he actually is playing. But at the same time, I think he does come off as fairly over-exaggerated. So I guess you could argue that he does try to really put forth the uh, energy to try to get off this air that is supposed to resemble the character that he's playing. And I think it's a fun film, to say the least. I mean, it's definitely not free from flaws, and I'm not saying that it is in any way, shape, or form up there with like the best comedies of all time. But I would say for a Rodney Dangerfield film, and again, I've only been really exposed to one other film, which is his animated film where he plays a dog. Um, you know, at least with this film, there was, I think, a lot more of a genuine effort put into it. And it seems like the comedy that Rodney Dangerfield is at least known for plays off well within this film. And even though it's not one that a whole lot of people remember, or at least people who maybe don't really know Rodney Dangerfield or are familiar with Rodney Dangerfield, I think this would be a good example of his work. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about this film without really giving too much away. I think there's a lot of interesting bits to it, and again, a lot of it is based through the comedy, so I don't really want to give away exactly as to what happens and who he encounters and what relationships he develops and all that. But I think it's just worthy to note that if you like these kinds of more quirkier comedies that try to play into certain aspects that may be or may not be serious, but sort of poke fun at it, you know, you'll find a genuineness to it that I think works to its advantage. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say, though. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care. Bye.